And that's the whole student loan cancellation, student loan debt. And Biden was asked about this yesterday, and you're going to recognize these patterns. What they do is he knows he wants to cancel student debt if it'll help him win in the next election, if it'll help him in November, if it'll help his poll numbers. His poll numbers are down to like 4. I mean, they're not that low, but you get what I'm saying. It's absurdly low poll numbers. And look, if he's got to hold off on this skip bow card until the general election, maybe he will, just like Obama did with gay marriage. He's like, "Oh, I'm evolving on that issue. Well, we're thinking about it. I'm studying, and I'll release something. I'll know in a couple weeks." BS. You know now. You just don't want to say. You just don't want to say it now. What you want to do is float the idea, have a bunch of people poll test it and focus group it, and do a little market research on whether or not it would be politically a good idea. You're not doing this out of any sort of principle. You're not doing this because it's the right or wrong thing to do. You're doing it for two reasons. Number one, it will buy votes. This is vote buying. There's nothing more, nothing less. There's no economic reason. There's no moral justification. There's no ethical justification. This is straight up vote buying. But it's also at the same time that you're buying votes, you're hugely rewarding two of your biggest donor classes. Number one is Wall Street. Number two is academia. Because the real solution for the cost of college being so high isn't to accommodate the cost of college being so high and transfer that gigantic, horrible burden to the taxpayers. The solution is, well, implement policies that make college cheaper. This will not make college cheaper for one person. The college will still cost the same. The cost will still be rising faster than inflation. And it will still be harder and harder for the common man among us to be able to go to college without being one of the chosen few that gets this heralded government aid. Because once you make college so expensive that for a middle class person going to college, they're dependent on the government to do it. Well, that is a huge lever of control. You mean colleges? I mean, the government now gets to pick and choose who goes to institutions of higher learning, who can become doctors and lawyers and engineers and any of these really complex jobs that have some sort of licensing or have their own college. The high earners, the dentists, the accountants. Now, the super rich, or heck, just the casually rich, they're not going to be affected by this much at all. Their kids are still going to go to whatever college they want to. It's not going to be that big a deal. But the big decider on who went to college 50 years ago was the kid, the student. If the parents couldn't help, he could at least go get a job and he could work his way through college. There was such a thing as working your way through college, but if they can get that just a little bit more expensive, there's no such thing as working your way through college. So you're either going to take out a buttload of debt, you can get the government to give you that debt, or you can get the government to decide who gets what scholarship and where, and they are going to be the gatekeepers to the upper rings of society, which they have always wanted to be. That's what an oligarchy is. That's what a nobility is. That's what an upper class is. That's what an elite is. So this whole idea about Biden canceling student loans is not solving the problem. This is buying votes, as in all these people who have a terrible record of going to the ballot box. These younger people who rack up debt, but now some of them are getting older. Hey, you want this? Put this carrot in front of their face. You want this? Vote for me, buddy, and maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll get this after the midterms if we do good enough. But think about this. What is the cancellation of student debt? It's not like he can just sign a piece of paper and poof, it goes away. That money was already borrowed. That money was already spent. The classes have already been attended to. The degrees have already been handed out. You can't undo it. It's not like they're going to go to the manager and get a refund and get their degree back. That cost, though, the people that are holding these papers of debt are going to get $1.5 trillion in taxpayer money if they cancel student debt. That's if they cancel all of it. That's about how much student debt's floating around out there. But what's really going to happen is they're going to slow roll this. They'll like do okay, maybe the first 10,000 of your student debt, maybe the first 50,000 of the student debt, just to keep the number low, just to keep the sticker shock value low. But make no mistake, if they thought it was politically popular, they'd cancel the whole thing because they would love to take $1.5 trillion of taxpayer money, and if it's not in the bank, they'll just go print it, and you'll have 10% inflation again next year. You'll pay for it. Oh, you're going to pay for it, and they're going to give it to their buddies. And who's going to be made whole from all this? Wall Street. You know, it's funny, if you loan if I'm a bank and I loan somebody money, and the bank and I do this for thousands and thousands of people, I can expect the cost to collect on some of those to be pretty expensive. I got to track these people down. I got to send them notices. I got to process their payments. I got to keep up with their payments. Some of them are going to default. Some of them are going to get it ejected in bankruptcy court. I know student loans are kind of different, but stick with me here just in the general sense. You're taking all of that risk away. You're taking all the negatives away, all the collection work, all the cost it takes to collect that over the next 30 years that these people are supposed to be paying it back. And you're going to be made whole 100% and make 100% of your expected profit, even though in reality that would never happen. So the banks and whoever else is the guys behind all this debt, they're going to make 100% of the profit. They're going to make more money than they would otherwise. And who is being saved by this? The richest among us? And it's also who? The academics can charge over market rates for a product that is not returning what the investment should. So here was Biden. He was asked about canceling student loan debt yesterday.
Majority Leader Schumer said yesterday that you're, quote, getting closer to using executive authority to cancel up to $50,000 in student loan debt. Can you confirm that? What exactly are you looking to plan to do here in the coming
You mean my
months?
spokesman said that?
Majority Leader Schumer.
Look, number one, first thing we did was reform the system that was in place that didn't work for anybody, that allowed people to write off debt if they engaged in public service. We have almost 1,785,000, don't hold me the exact number, I'll get the number, 700 and some thousand have had debt forgiven, their whole debt forgiven because of their working in either as teachers or other means by which they qualify. And we continue to make that easier. Secondly, I am considering dealing with some debt reduction. I am not considering $50,000 debt reduction, but I'm in the process of taking a hard look at whether or not there will be additional debt forgiveness. And I'll have an answer on that in the next couple of weeks.
How high are you looking
Thank
at?
you.
Okay, so we don't know how high he wants to go, but he says 50,000 is too high. 10,000 seems like, isn't that something he said before? I don't have it in front of me, but just that sounds right. So forgive me if I'm wrong. Don't worry, 10 people will correct me over here in the comment section. But some of the common reactions are being put up over here in the chat room already. Ram Kumar says, if I paid off my debt, can I apply to get that money back? You know, that's the questions that they've been asked about this before. And they've even tossed around the idea of, well, we may look into the process after we get this initial round taken care of. We'll see how other people can be made whole. Wow. So there's going to be handouts for debt that you used to have that you already paid off a few years ago. And we're going to take money from the taxpayers or print more money and inflate our currency more just to hook these people up. But when we talk about the people who attended college, aren't they the least likely to be unemployed? Aren't they the highest earning slice of our population? Why are we giving these people any goodies at all? It doesn't make economic sense, doesn't make moral sense, doesn't make ethical sense. It only makes political sense if and only if these people will be more likely to vote for you, not only support you, but actually turn out to the polls and vote for you. It might be good to wait and hang on to this till after the election, after the midterm election, or maybe even after the presidential election, so you can dangle it like a carrot in front of their face. Vote for me, and I'll get rid of $50,000 worth of your student debt. Because for most people, that would eliminate their student debt altogether. And if that's the case, look, 50,000 debts, 50,000 bucks is a lot of money, but it's not some insurmountable hill to climb. I mean, that's a really nice car. But just first, I just can't stress this enough. There is no one who is less needing of our help than college degree recipients or even people who had some college. They're more likely to be employed. They get paid better than the average worker or the worker who never attended college. And they're more likely, people who attend college are more likely to come from comparatively affluent households in the first place. But really, from my little economics point of view, it's worth asking who has $50,000 worth of student loans? Because for the most part, it's not, struggling dropouts from state schools. These huge, large student loan values are heavily, heavily associated with professional schools, the ones that produce graduates who are going to be very well compensated. These are people who go to MBA programs. There was some statistics here in a write-up on reason.com. Boy, they're one of the best sources on stuff like this. Reason.com. Remember that one. But they noted that an MBA grad on average earns more than $73,000 in earnings their first year out of school. And so when you see, the big student loans, what are these degrees? Well, it's that Masters of Business, MBAs, JD, lawyers, Bachelors of Arts in Business, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and the big one, MDs, doctors. Okay, doctors, if you're a doctor in this country, you can expect to at least make six figures. I know a few doctors, and none of them make less than that. In fact, one of my friends that I went to high school with is an anesthesiologist. Last I checked, and this was like 5 years ago, $480,000 is what he makes, and that's no overtime. That's just straight up salary, bud. You can't mess that up. So we're gonna go pay off these people's student loan, really? The top 20% of earners, the richest among us, owe 35% of the student debt in this country. Why are we giving them anything? Why are we taking money or inflating the currency and giving people a de facto pay cut in the lowest rungs of society so that Dr. Richie Rich out there can get his debt forgiven? It's crazy. It would incredibly disproportionately benefit doctors, lawyers, well-paid medical specialists, comfortable salaried individuals with advanced business degrees. But you don't hear Joe Biden or Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, talking about their big plan to give huge amounts of money to corporate lawyers and junior associates at hedge funds. No, we're going to do this to help common people. No, it's not. You're helping rich people with this. If you did have a program to forgive $50,000 per borrower, $950 billion. Now, on this program, it was just thrown out there by the reporter asking the question to Joe Biden yesterday, but he didn't come up with that out of the sky. That was something someone else in the Biden administration had floated as a number, 50,000. So what they do is they float the 10,000, float the 50,000 number, float a few different ideas, and they see which one polls best, which one focus groups best. They'll go out and they'll get some research firms to go ask a bunch of people in surveys like, hey, what do you think of this plan? And if it's popular enough and they think it'll help them, then they'll choose what they do and go forward with it. So this is not based on any sort of principle or ethics or economics. This is straight up grift. This is straight up buying votes. This is what Alexis de Tocqueville talked about when he thought America was a miracle, but the one flaw that they have, and it is something the founding fathers mentioned during the Constitutional Convention, it's the flaw with democracy, period. Throughout history, it only lasts until the people realize they can vote themselves goodies from the public treasury. And then economic collapse ensues, and then authoritarianism returns, and no more democracy. A lot of suffering in the meantime. But if there's this group called Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, that must not be a very powerful committee over here because they're getting nothing done. But they did math, and they said if there's $50,000 per borrower, that would come in at around $950 billion. Now that number's probably not going to happen because not all of the borrowers have $50,000 worth of debt, but I think they even calculated it in if we just took the ones that have less than $50,000 and we forgave the whole thing. So if we're looking at a price tag of about almost $1 trillion, what's going to happen to your inflation rate? What's going to happen to your paycheck? You're going to get another pay cut. You're not enjoying that 10% pay cut you got last year on top of the 6% pay cut you got the year before or whatever. And you're not going to enjoy the 10% pay cut you're getting right now that's happening because the deficit is staying at these ridiculous levels. But Elizabeth Warren is a big proponent of this. She loves the idea. Elon Musk buys Twitter. She's like, you know how much student debt he could have paid off? But Elizabeth Warren keeps talking about this program to help working people. But what you're not looking out for the little guy. This is $1 trillion bailout for the upper class and the upper middle class. There's not a whole lot of little guys that are going to be helped by this or going to be helped much by this. Plus, it's illegal. It's illegal to do it through an executive order. Listen, I would be against it even if it did go through the House and the Senate and the proper legislative machinations in order to be signed into law by the president. But the idea that the president can just sign a piece of paper and invalidate the contracts to the tune of $1 trillion of private citizens, that's bizarre. You can't just put the taxpayers on the hook for $1 trillion without it going through Congress. Totally illegal, totally unconstitutional. But where's that money going? It makes sense when you see where the money's going. In the next election cycle, you will see who the biggest donors to that side of the aisle are. It's Wall Street, the Goldman Sachs of the world, the big Wall Street firms of the world. You know, they're supposed to be like corporations acting all corporation-y, and that's supposed to be the domain of evil Republicans who just hurt the little guy so they can help the rich guy. But those guys are overwhelmingly Democrat supporters. Even the employees of these big tech firms, overwhelmingly Democrat. But academia is even bigger. Barack Obama's biggest donation block came from faculty at the University of California system. So you're going to give $1 trillion to a bunch of, Democrats. Oh, now it makes sense.